Hello everyone, welcome back to OCD's Recovery's YouTube channel. Today I'm going to talk about another really in-depth video about somatic OCD or hyper-awareness. A lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about in this video could also play over into severe physical manifestations of anxiety. So generalized anxiety disorder, the books on the reading list, Self-Help for Your Nerves, and At Last a Life by Paul David. These books really can encompass basically how to go about. More than likely, the majority of your recovery journey for this is going to be wearing it like an uncomfortable coat while looking at your core beliefs as well, because it's also really important. So these are 10 things that really helped me on my recovery journey with somatic OCD. Just to give you a little bit of a background, I got really low. I was chronically stuck for about 18 months. I did end up in a mental hospital. Not everyone's going to end up in a mental hospital, just where I was. It lasted really bad for me. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't have the tools. If I had the tools I had right now and had it attached in the way it did for me back then, I probably would not have ended up in a mental hospital. I just didn't know what was going on. So, number one, and the most important thing about all this, no matter what you hear about sensorimotor OCD, and most of the stuff you will hear on sensorimotor OCD on YouTube is wrong, most of it. So the sensation is not the problem. So if I was to just go like this on you for quite some time, I'm more than likely isn't going to bother you because you're not going to be chronically latched to the fear of never noticing it. The problem is the fear. Now, we have a disorder, so we don't process things normally. There's no need to look at how the brain works or anything like that. We don't have to dive into why it's genetic and why it's not. That doesn't get us anywhere. That is a dead end for OCD. All we know is we have OCD, we have the tools we know to go forward, and that's what we apply. This is why psychoanalysis and psychodynamic therapy, looking into your past, is more than likely not what you want to do for OCD. So the problem is the fear, and then the irrational beliefs you attach to those fears, such as, I can't stand it, my life is ruined. So overgeneralization, severe catastrophizing, that's huge. A lot of OCD sufferers, rightfully so, we catastrophize. We get really, really upset about things because we're more than likely chronically suffering and really, really stuck. So it can be really frustrating at times, but the reality is in order to move forward, we have to go towards our fears and start to break down our irrational beliefs. Number two, exposures are only going to get you so far in this. I understand that a lot of people say ERP is the gold standard, and exposing yourself certain scenarios, like if you have outward compulsive behaviors or avoidance behaviors like harm OCD with knives, or contamination OCD, or ROCD, avoiding your boyfriend in certain places or girlfriend, those will need graded exposures. Somatic OCD does not need graded exposures. It needs the fear. You have to work on the fear. So I see a lot of people that will say, you don't have to address the fear, you just have to get used to the sensation. That's not going to work. I promise you right now. It might work for some people, but majority, so me, Paul Little, Brianna Hubit, other people I've met with that's made huge, huge progress in somatic OCD, we had to look at the core fear, and not a lot of people want to talk about that. So again, there can be a benefit from focusing on your sensation, maybe 15 minutes a day, for an example, once a day, every other day, if you're really, really scared of just like the sensation itself. But again, usually it's the fear of being stuck. It's not the sensation itself, because the sensation has been there your whole entire life. So you're not treatment resistant. Some of the biggest myths I see, I did a huge video on debunking the myths on sensorimotor. So some of the big myths I see are basically, it's much harder to recover. Everyone with OCD and their particular fear, as I always say, like Hannah with ROCD, that felt just as real to her as somatic OCD for me. The GAD I'm experiencing currently and the body dysmorphic fears I'm going through, this feels just as real right now. The fears I'm suffering with right now feel just as real to me than sensorimotor did. That's how OCD works. So compare the suffering as no benefit, and there's a lot of people out there will say stuff like, oh, I'm treatment resistant. The reason why you think you're treatment resistant is because the advice on sensorimotor is pretty garbage, and because you're trying to rid yourself of the sensation. That's the main thing. So I definitely wanted to talk about that. So number 4 is reading the books. You more than likely are not going to be able to get underneath your sensorimotor fear of being stuck without actually adopting unconditional life acceptance and unconditional self-acceptance. This takes a little bit to get used to, and then that's how you start to adopt these philosophies. You have to break down your core beliefs. Why can't you stand this? You've been standing it. It's really uncomfortable, but you can stand it. You know, my life is ruined. Well, you're right. Life isn't ruined because you're here right now, and it can always be worse. As Albert Ellis says, when we use stuff like awful and terrible, we correlate that to worse than worse, and it's the baddest thing we could ever have, and we know that's not true. So it's not, how did I say this? So it's not about engaging with the sensation or the thoughts throughout the day. The majority of the day is wearing anxiety like an uncomfortable coat. The majority of everyone's OCD recovery journey, exposures, disputing, whether they're set by a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a coach, or anyone that actually understands OCD, will more than likely need to tell you that 99.9% of your day is going about your day, building healthy habits, bringing down avoidance behaviors, and wearing anxiety like an uncomfortable coat. Claire Weeks describes this very well in her book, and Paul Davids, which is basically like the new version of self-help for your nerves in a modern day form, it talks about, you'll never see them talk about needing to rid yourself of it now. And that's the main tool that people think they're going to use. They walk around all day and they just say stuff like, well, everyone notices their saliva. Everyone notices their saliva. That's agreeing with the thought, and that's going to keep you stuck. Not always, but a lot of the time. So the internal thermometer is more than likely the biggest mental compulsion for sensorimotor OCD, and more than likely the biggest compulsion for all OCD people. What do I mean by the internal thermometer? This is something that Rob talks about very well. So the internal thermometer goes a little bit like this. You're going around your day, you're going about your day, and what's happening is inside of your day, like right now, I'm moderately anxious because of the new fears that have developed for me. So I'm moderately anxious. And then what I'll do is you'll wake up in the morning, you'll say, am I more anxious today? Am I less anxious today? Am I noticing my sensation more today, or am I not noticing my sensation more today? And what you're doing here is you keep yourself really stuck, and this is a mental compulsion that will need to get brought down. The biggest misconception about sensorimotor OCD is that you can bring down the automatic rumination. You cannot. In order to bring down the automatic rumination, the fear will need to come down. If you do not address the fear of being stuck forever, your fear of your life being ruined, the automatic rumination will be brought up. I have to be pretty clear about this. Anyone that tells you that you can bring down rumination without addressing anything else to zero over time does not understand OCD. Plain and simple. It's that simple, and there's no other way to say it. You know, we have to be pretty blunt about this in ways, because a lot of people will give people really, really poor advice, and then they'll think they're treatment resistant, which they're not. There's more than likely no such thing as treatment resistant OCD. So number 7, you need to stop avoiding. One of the biggest compulsions for me was playing compulsive video games, 100 hours a week, not going to work and stuff like that. In order to really get better, you're going to have to go towards things that make you really uncomfortable. A lot of people don't like doing this because humans love comfort, but the reality is comfort doesn't get us where we want to go, and we all know that. So avoidance behaviors for sensorimotor OCD, you know, can be maybe something like, you know, avoiding certain foods that make you salivate more, or going to, you know, going for a walk because you hyper-focus on your breathing. If there's something you're not doing because of your OCD, you you need to do those things in a graded exposure way, set by yourself or with someone that understands OCD. So be prepared to be uncomfortable. So since somatic OCD, every OCD fear that you have has its own levels of difficulty. Some have easier set exposures to go after that are outward compulsions. Some are a little bit harder to target, maybe like solipsism OCD or false memory OCD in the way sensorimotor. This doesn't mean that this OCD is more difficult than another OCD. It just means that every type of OCD needs a unique approach in a way, but it all funnels to the same way, which is unconditional self-life, other acceptance, moving with uncertainty, exposures, and so forth. That is the key primary thing that needs to be addressed. So, you know, you more than likely are going to be uncomfortable longer than you want to. And I know that's not what you want to hear, but that's the reality of OCD in general. Anyone that's telling you you can recover in 7 days, 30 days, you know, anyone that says stuff like this, I heard this recently in a podcast, you know, if you don't recover in a year, the advice you're getting is wrong. That is absolutely garbage advice. And that is not true, because we don't know how intertwined these fears are. We don't know what the person's doing when no one's around and stuff like that. They might just kind of be coasting. It's too multifactorial to say stuff like black and white. I'm going to give you a little bit piece of advice on life. Rob and I have talked about this. Rob talks about this a lot. Anyone who's giving black and white advice on anything in life, doesn't just have to be OCD. Think carefully about what they're saying. So build a healthy life structure. Rob said it perfectly. In order to recover from OCD, you basically have to revamp your whole entire life. You don't, it's not that like you have to turn your career around, all these things, but when you're chronically suffering for OCD, we like to stay safe and we really tend to just basically go back into these uncomfortable positions. And that's really not what works out for us. What we need to do is go towards discomfort as much as we don't want to do that. And I know it's not easy to do. Like, you know, for me, with the new stuff I have, it could be very easy for me to sit down and start analyzing the stuff, but I have to just go about my day as best as I can and let the anxiety just be there. That is the key about Sensorimotor OCD. You got to let the fear be there. You got to let the hyper-awareness be there. You got to let yourself be distracted. You have to stop seeking reassurance. You have to stop letting people tell you that reassurance is okay. It's never okay. Don't let anyone tell you that. It's a huge misconception. If someone is telling you, you know, if someone is drastically telling you stuff outside the stuff I'm telling you, you know, listen, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I have somatic OCD. I had it. You know, I know what you went through. These are the things that I see work for myself and work for other people with somatic OCD. You know, if anyone is telling you you don't need to address the fears of being stuck forever, you might want to look for a second opinion. So this is really, really important. The last thing I want to talk about is why relapses stick around more than you want them to. In the beginning, it will feel like you have a relapse every other day sometimes because you don't have the tools, you haven't adopted unconditional self-life and other acceptance. This is all new stuff for you. You're going about your day, and it's kind of like a new territory, and that's really important to talk about. So what happens is as we have good days, I did a video on this yesterday, it's on the YouTube channel, about how we put too much emphasis on good days. But what we'll do is we'll have a really good day with somatic OCD, and then we'll be like, oh my gosh, I don't notice my sensation. When it's not about noticing your sensation, it's about the fear. There's mistake number one. Mistake number two is you put way too much emphasis on having good days. We do not have good days and we do not have bad days. We have good and bad moments. No day is entirely bad. Even in the worst case scenario, in Man's Search for Meaning, he still found slight joys throughout the day, which goes to show you right there, the whole entire day wasn't awful. These overgeneralizations are really bad for our psychology. I'm a big believer in that. The more we see things in the rational light, the more we have the potential to bring down our psychological suffering. So, black and white terms, want to get rid of them. All or nothing stuff, want to get rid of them. Balance, decent habits, bring those in, but show yourself self-compassion when you slip, because you will slip. So, that's the biggest thing. And you're basically hyper-focusing on ridding yourself of the sensation. So this isn't up here, but one of the worst things, in my opinion, for somatic OCD is mindfulness meditation because it brings you internal and you're already super stuck internal. This isn't to say it can't be beneficial along the road, but I've never practiced mindfulness meditation and I've recovered from somatic OCD or very much fully recovered almost, or it doesn't matter what it's called. I don't even like to use those terms anymore. It just doesn't bother me in my life anymore. So sometimes I might be a little bit hyper aware throughout the day. Who cares? It doesn't affect my life at all. I do everything I want to do. I go to the gym, I exercise, I go to music festivals, I hang out with my wife, I have dinner, I watch movies. Everything I just mentioned, I avoided. Everything. Nothing I avoid anymore. I don't avoid anything because there's nothing to be afraid of. And I don't want to be on my deathbed personally and look at myself and say, I'm so happy I avoided everything in my life because I was afraid to be anxious. That's super important to talk about. So I hope you enjoyed this video. This is 10 advice from me. Like I said, there are a couple things I like to be pretty blunt on. You're not treatment resistant. You will more than likely need to work on the fear, the core fear of being stuck forever. Exposures will probably only get you so far with chronic somatic OCD. If it just pops up here and there, you might be good. Who knows? I wasn't. Paul Little wasn't. Brianna Huba wasn't. A lot of these other people, we just weren't. So thank you so much for watching and have a great day.